In this moment, I am with Dr. Eric Vanderberg, and I will present some interview about the ecology of Honduras, specific in Oyuca reserve. Well, some history about Dr. Eric. Dr. Eric studied in Cambridge University. He has a PhD in the biological reserves in conservation. Dr. Eric live in Honduras, here in Zamorano, and have a ecological farmer in Nicaragua. Well, I don't take a lot of time, so I start with this, Doctor.
Okay, thank you very much. So you'd like to know a little bit more about my career and how I got interested in ecology?
Please.
Okay. Actually, it's interesting. As far back as I can remember, I always loved nature and I always loved animals. So even today, I have a collection, and in that collection, there are insects that I collected when I was 5 years old.
Yeah.
Okay. So at that time, I already knew that I wanted to do something with nature. And then I was going to university and taking the degree in biology, and people were saying, "Oh, but there are no jobs." And I said, "Well, I don't care. This is what I want to do." And my PhD advisor said, "Well, okay, if that's what you want to do." And my advice to anybody is that you should follow your heart. What you really, really want to do, that's what you should do, because then you're going to put in the time and the effort that it takes to be really good. If you do something because you think you're going to make a lot of money,
You didn't enjoy it.
you don't enjoy it and you're doing it because you have to. I prefer to make less money maybe than if I was a doctor, but I enjoy life.
Okay. When you choose your career, you have to get a great inspiration. What is your inspiration to take this career?
My inspiration was I was always fascinated by animals.
Yeah.
By how, as a child, it was more like, how can I catch it? Okay, I was running after it, catching it, and then keeping it as a pet for a while, or collecting it. But and every day I would find something different. So it never got boring because I would keep finding new and different things. And 50 years later, it's still the same.
We have to this part. It's actually some question about ecology.
Okay.
First, I want to know what is ecology. It's a big term, but I want to know your knowledge about ecology.
Okay, I'm not going to give you the whole ecology course
Yeah.
right here, but the term ecology basically means the relationship between all living and non-living things that interact in the environment. Okay, so the relationships that exist between everything that's alive and all of the non-living things that influence them. So it's a big subject.
It's a big concept. So it's like it's not only a little thing.
It's a simple concept, but
To something.
but it can get very complex.
Yeah.
A dictionary is a simple complex, a book with all the known words. But when you start looking at them individually,
Yeah.
there's a lot of complexity.
Okay. Well, doctor, you live in Nicaragua, and now you stay here in Zamorano.
Yes.
Tell me something about the difference in the ecology of this region, this country, because I know it's different, but you have more experience about that. Tell us something.
Okay, that's a very good question, actually. I was expecting that I spent so much time in Nicaragua, I knew Central America very well. And since Honduras, it's from here to where I lived in Nicaragua is about 6 hours driving by car. So it's like from here to Copan. Okay. And yet what we're seeing is not everything is as similar as I expected. Northern Nicaragua has pine forests, but the pine forests in northern Nicaragua is still not the same as the pine forests here. Even here, the forest on the Yucca is different from the forest across the valley at Yuscaran, and it's different from La Tigra. So every time you change to a different geographic location, I'm surprised myself how different things are. Just local differences in evolution because each mountain is isolated from the other mountain.
Do you think the ecology of Honduras is more different or bigger than Nicaragua or not?
What I'm trying to say is I'm not thinking of the ecology of Honduras as a whole, but that Honduras has 30 different ecosystems. Each of those is different. So it's not Nicaragua versus Honduras, it's each mountain in Honduras is different from the next mountain. So it's not comparing countries. Countries are artificial borders, artificial constructs by man. Nature has its own borders, which can be rivers, which can be mountain ranges, deserts. Those are the differences I'm interested in. I don't care what country it's in. I care about what organisms are there. Okay. You understand?
Yeah. You're focused more in the organization in the country, not about the diversity or
in the ecosystem.
Ecosystem, exactly.
Okay.
So, tell me, or tell us, maybe it's better the answer. Tell us about the reserve, the biological reserve for Yucca. Tell some information, interesting information about that, because you have more travel than us. You maybe go 3 or 5 times a week or more.
Okay.
So give some information about Yucca that the people have to know about that.
Okay. 2 things that are particularly important about the reserve. First, there are very few places with very good primary forest. Primary forest is forest that has never been cut. A forest that is exactly the way it would have been before people showed up on the planet. Okay? So even like a lot of like large national parks, like La Tigra, very close by. La Tigra, people go there, they say, oh, it's beautiful, there's nice forest. I go there and I say, that's not original forest. That's what we call secondary forest. It was forest that was cut and has been, now they've protected the area so the forest is recovering, but it's not the same as original forest. There's very, very little original forest left in Pacific Honduras. There's still some areas in the Pachuca and there are areas that are left, but in this part of the country where there are a lot of people, there are very few places with the original forest. So Yucca has about 200 or 300 hectares of original forest. That's extremely important for the biodiversity. The other major reason why it's a reserve and not a national park, a reserve is more strictly protected than a national park. National Park, visitors are welcome. Reserve, visitors are not welcome. Only scientists, and we can also invite students for educational purposes.
Yeah.
Um, uh, but it's the major watershed that supplies 20 different communities, including the Zamorano. That's where the drinking water comes from. Okay? We don't want visitors going up there and peeing and messing the place up because, let's face it, who wants to drink pee? Okay? We want to keep that water pure. And the way to do that is to keep the number of people at a minimum.
Yeah. Well, Zamorano have to do some, I don't know, investigate or some interactive with research. For example, you say about Zamorano take the water to consume. Do you think this intervention or this intervention is good or not to the reserve?
Where we take the water doesn't influence the reserve because we don't take the water from the top.
Yeah.
We take the water from the bottom. So the water is captured at the top, and then it runs down the mountain. And we take it at the bottom where it would run into the river. So we are taking advantage of the gift that the mountain has to offer. So we're not having a negative impact on the mountain by taking the water down at the bottom. It would be bad if we were taking the water at the very top, because then the ecosystem would be affected. But the way it is now, the ecosystem is self-sustaining, and the water that runs out of it is the part that we can use.
So you feel Zamorano do a great intervention with these reserves?
I would not call it an intervention, because an intervention implies that you're changing the ecosystem. We're not changing the ecosystem. We're trying to preserve it in the exact condition that we found it. We want to keep it exactly the way it is with no changes, and hopefully that it can even adapt to climate change without being ruined.
Well, doctor, to finish the first part of the interview, I want to know, tell us something about the ecology, exactly, for example, the birds or the frog, because in the course of ecology, you say us about the new species of frog. So, what's happened with these species when you preserve a new species and take note about that? What happened? What do you do? Or what is the process to confirm that new species?
Okay.
I know
you're covering a lot of ground here.
Yeah.
You won't leave anything else, any other topics for the other students. But, okay. The first thing that happened is a visiting scientist who has studied frogs in Honduras for 30 years. He started as a student at Zamorano, he got his PhD, and he's still working on frogs and on different places. He has looked at frogs all over Honduras. He came back to Yucca and he says, well, that one looks a little bit different, but it kind of looks similar to one at La Tigra and one that's over at Yuscaran. But just to be sure, we'll take a small sample of blood and analyze the DNA. And so even though the frog looks fairly similar, not very different, but maybe a little bit, when you look at the DNA, it's not the same as the Yuscaran or the La Tigra frogs. That means it's a new one. It has closely related species on the other mountains, but the DNA is very different.
Yeah.
So that makes it a new species. First step. First step. Next, he needs to show not just the DNA, but he needs to describe the species. So catch one frog, preserve it, and that will be what's called the holotype, the specimen on which the species description is based, that defines the species. So he makes a very detailed description of everything about that frog. The spots, the size, the sex, everything. Then he sends it to a journal. And they send it to other experts to give their opinion and make sure that they all agree. And then finally, the journal says, okay, we'll publish it, and the species, the new species will be official when the article finally appears. Okay? The process for that usually takes from the time that you find the specimen in the field to the time the paper appears. If it's fast, if it's really fast, 1 year. Normally 2 or 3 years, sometimes 20 years. Not because it has to take that long, but there's one case of a species that a friend of mine found. He was working on the description, and then I sent him another beetle in the same group, and he said, well, what do you think of this?
Part of this interview, doctor, I have some 3 questions. Basically, it's easy. Tell me, what is a biological corridor?
A biological corridor is basically a way that animals can get from one protected area to another protected area. Many protected areas are in fact quite small, and in order to have a breeding population of large mammals, in particular things like cougar or deer or monkeys, if it's always the same individuals in a small population, they inbreed and the gene pool is reduced. So in order to increase the gene pool or the effective population size, you need to get from one place to another population. If there are only highways and cities, they can't make it. So the idea behind the biological corridor is some pathway that they can use to get from one mountain to another mountain without dying.
Yeah. Uyuca is a biological corridor or not?
Uyuca is a reserve, but there is a biological corridor from Uyuca to La Tigra and another one from Uyuca to Yuscaran.
This biological corridor is affected to Zamorano or not?
Right now, officially the corridor doesn't go through Zamorano, but a student is just doing a thesis on this, and it looks like actually Zamorano is the best corridor to get from Uyuca to Yuscaran. because that is what the data and observations from animals are telling us.
Do you have something, a research of some species in this corridor, like a cougar or
Yes.
something like that?
Yes. Me personally, no, but the Centro de Biodiversidad, the Biodiversity Center, has a series of what we call camera traps, which are cameras which are left in the field, and they're triggered automatically when something passes. And so you set it for sensitivity, whether it captures only big animals or smaller animals, and we're finding that animals are traveling between Uyuca and Vizcaran through the campus here. Okay, they're going through the forest by the Pivote. There's a forest there, and they're going through that, and they're going across the valley, and we can show that on the cameras. There also is some movement through the central campus. There are several smaller corridors through the central campus. The theory did not predict that they should go through central campus because there are too many people. But it's quiet after 10 p.m. After 10 p.m., there's nobody, and nobody's killing them. Nobody's hunting them. So they're using it.
Maybe in some time we have the possibility to see a different animal here. Or,
Yes.
or
Yes.
do you think no? Because I think if maybe I go to clean it or something like that, and maybe 11 or 12, and I find a cougar in the street, do you think it's normal or maybe no?
I would not be surprised. There have been cougars seen down near the river, near aquaculture. We have pictures of other animals that we did not expect. We have the paca, which is Tepescuintle. We have those here on Central Campus. You don't see them, but they're in the pictures. Okay, we have pictures from the traps. Okay. Recently I saw a badger, Tejon. Okay. Here in Central Campus.
Doctor, to finish this work, this part of the biological corridor, tell us what we have to do to preserve this corridor or try to take care about that.
Usually the best corridors have trees, they have habitat for animals to hide, and they have food. You need those three things. You need food. If you're going to go for a long distance, you need to eat. If there are people, you have to be able to hide. And that usually means forest. Fruit trees are usually helpful. Hiding places are basically a forest that is not just an arboretum with grass, but a forest with messy undergrowth, lots of plants and bushes that people don't like to go into. So like around some of the lagunas de oxidación, there are little patches of forest there where you don't want to enter because it's just too hard. Okay? That's where the animals are happy.
Do you feel in habitats?
Yeah. So we didn't really do those ponds with that in mind, but the result is we built a corridor from one pond to the next because people don't like to go to the ponds that smell bad, but the animals don't really care about that. And we have a good corridor.
Well, doctor, some message to the community of San Juan?
Some message?
What do you want to say to the people of San Juan about the ecology or study? I don't know.
Well, actually, we keep talking about Uyuca as the special reserve, but in fact, the Centro Zamorano campus is also a reserve that is also very valuable. There are not many places in Honduras where you can go out and you can see the agoutis, the iguanas, and they don't run away. Okay? That's amazing. We have thousands of people here, and the animals are don't need to be afraid. That's congratulations.
Yeah. Well, thanks everybody to see this record. Thanks, Dr. A, and have a good week. Thank you.
you.